and on the government end, um, generally, we make an effort. Those that are able make it up there, maybe twice and during their service. We have small groups of Delaware from our what we call a service area around in Bartlesville and Dewey, where Joe and my father are from,
Mm.
and uh, but uh, there are just a couple of hundred of Delawares there, period.
Wow.
So it's hard to understand. It's hard to, I couldn't quantify. We also have a special, I'm sure you've heard of the special situation we have with the Cherokee Nation,
Hmm.
where we're kind of a tribe inside a tribe.
Okay.
And believe it or not, this is a little bit of a tangent, but a lot of Delaware don't know that they're Delaware. They have Bureau of Indian Affairs blood quantum cards that state how much Native American they are.
Hmm.
And they say Cherokee. And then there's parentheses and it says AD, like, BC AD.
Hmm.
It means adopted Delaware. And a lot of people don't know what that means. And I've encountered a lot of like absolutely people that found out they were Delaware, they thought they were Cherokee.
Wow.
So it's hard to say, but I would say that we have people going up there, probably, tens, 20s of us from the government each year for different reasons, for
Hmm.
cultural and other government to government relationship stuff. And for me, this piece is a little bit different because I actually had the chance to do something physical. And to me, uh, I'm also an art historian, and so in the history of video art, the physicality of the work was very important when you look at artists like seminal works by Chris Burden or Bruce Nauman. And so to me, I had just finished a piece in the area called Quilunaman. And so I had been thinking a lot about the walking purchase because that was the origins of the walking purchase. Um, the it became more and more of it became more and more prominent as I created that piece. It became much more important as I was in that space creating in the area in Lenape Hoking when I was working on other works. This event, this walking purchase, which in really the story of America seems to be one of the first kind of land swindles of Native Americans that you learn as a young person. And so as I'm working in the area and I'm coming back to Lenapehoking more to work and to do art there, it becomes more and more important to me that this is really one of, you know a very, very important part of the American story, the story of America that at least I grew up with as a child. I've known about it not because my parents told me, but because it was something it was just a part, it was everywhere. It was this if you cared about both my parents, Native Americans, if you cared about those types of issues, it's something that you were going to encounter and hear about. It was something that you couldn't, it was, to me, it was kind of one of the first, it's the symbol of the first great land swindle of American Indians. And so, looking at the route, knowing the route of the original walking purchase, the origins of the original walking purchase, and they really derived from, uh, to my knowledge, and I qualify a lot, that they were the result of the sons of William Penn living beyond their means, in a find supposedly they found this mysterious article. This is the same time that antiquities and other things are becoming, things, people are finding things, so people found this kind of dubious treaty, this dubious agreement that nobody remembered. And it's something that you would think would be acted upon quickly. If you make this arrangement for a purchase, you think that you would, not do it years later, under duress, or this encroachment of people. There's lots of people coming. There's a hunger for land. Land is very, very becoming, this very important commodity. And so you have people in a tight spot, and they did something very, very extreme. My understanding is that two Lenape representatives showed up but first of all, the Lenape leaders at that time were very they were very suspect of the legitimacy of this agreement. However, they agreed to do the walking purchase, and unfortunately, the underhandedness or the trickery continued. The two Lenape show up. There is a Olympic runner ready to run for the Penn family. They had already cut a trail for the Penn runners to run. And the Lenape were prepared in a more conventional style, to my knowledge, of just a true walking purchase. It's, to my knowledge, that is how we measured land, how we measured time and space and territory, was by walking in a day. Generally, a person can walk about 20 miles in a day, to my, as we find out in this piece here. Me with very little training, I was able to walk, the 20 miles. I don't know if that's something you want to include, but I walked as far as the Lenape did. I walked, but what's funny about my walk was I walked from one state historical marker to another state historical marker, and neither mentions the names of Lenape or really focuses on the Lenape. It's more about the colonists who participated in it and where they stopped and started. Um, However, we do know that that is also the place where the Lenape also decided that this was a dubious endeavor, and that they did not want to participate in it any longer. And so that's where they stopped walking. So I don't go any farther than my ancestors did in this piece. I also go backwards. And I do that for a very specific reason. And it's really thinking about what I want people to think about is kind of an undoing of this, things. There's the saying that, like nothing can be undone, or, you can fix her, but maybe that might not be good. But it's really about it backwards was very conscious. It was something that was probably one of the most debated uh, aspects of this piece in my mind, or with people who I was consulting with, the curators and other people who helped to make the piece. It seemed to be to make it more meaningful as an undoing of this wrong, or a symbol of an undoing of wrong that was done, that had great consequences. And so all I could do was, in some way, is to put forward this effort, this physical effort, to impart to people the difficulty of the situation that those people were in. This was the beginning of a very long journey for my ancestors, and for my family, and for my community. There is a Lenape diaspora, but I come from the Delaware tribe of Indians here in Oklahoma. In our community, we are the people who made this very long journey that started with this agreement, this walk, this measuring of territory. And so that's what I'm trying to express in this video art piece, is um, an undoing of those acts, an undoing of the walking purchase, and it's a symbolic undoing of the walking purchase. And so I knew that I would not literally be able to walk through what is now private land, public land, highways, and those things, as the crow flies, as we would say nowadays. But I do think of I did consider that I would be walking on treacherous roads at times. Some of the roads are very pastoral. Some of and they turn more into kind of a more dangerous situation. And so the cars coming at you, and the you know things starting to pop up and things starting to ramp up, to me, are symbolic of our journey and the difficulties we continually faced once this walking purchase was begun. Well, once the walking purchase started, it was the beginning of a very, very long walk that was 9, 10 times different for other groups, but for mine, it was approximately 9 different moves. And each one of those moves, we encountered new technologies, new speed, or new technology, new people, new territories. We adapted. But to me, they're symbols of that change, and also the kind of the treacherousness of kind of having to, be exiled or be forced to move or be forced to walk through something that normally you wouldn't do. Nobody, some people need to move and have to move, we were, being forced away. And so to me, the cars actually are are symbols of, the difficulties and the kind of the that's often what I think about, is the harrowing, situation that my ancestors were in at the time. They were forced to leave home, and so they encountered all these really dangerous really dangerous obstacles that, but they survived, and that's why we're here today. Yatica is a ultra marathoner in a number of different arenas, and I was, as a young person, I was a runner, competitively, for a very, until I was an adult. So riding cars and being on roads is something I'm very accustomed to.
Mhm.
But in the context, when I'm thinking about what we're doing, and also pushing the limits for me as a human being trying to walk that far, and really, I guess in some ways, I was, first of all, I was thinking about that while this is obviously very dangerous, and we could be hurt at any second. Also, my ancestors, they faced this same exact situation. They were facing it in ways, it was much more harrowing for them. That we knew there were cars coming at us. We knew that we were, that that we were going to have huge trucks, grazing us. Um, my ancestors didn't know what lied ahead. And so those are the kind of things that I try to keep in mind when people, we look back at our ancestors' decisions and things like that. We don't really know what they were going through. We don't know what they were trying to preserve, what their concerns were, who they were trying to protect, the situations they were in, the politics of it all, really simply. And so it was, we were very aware that, what we were doing, in a sense, was nothing compared to what our ancestors were faced with. What I'd like to impart to people is that, uh, is really what I've just been speaking about with you is that that it's not just that somebody moved, it's that somebody was thrown into great danger, and somebody or that my ancestors, this was the beginning of a very harrowing chapter in our history. This was the and then and that these images of huge trucks bearing down on you, um as you move fastly, to get to your next spot, that that I'm trying to impart to the audience what that might have been like for it. I want people to see that that's what we're exploring as American Indians, as a Delaware and an Osage, that what it was like for us to have to, be moved, to be forced to move, and to find a new place, and that these cars, these obstacles are symbolic of the difficulties my ancestors faced. In some ways, I think it might be hard to understand, but in some ways not so much, once you understand kind of that this again, they're symbols of the difficulties we faced, and this was the only way that I could really do something that I thought was meaningful. I do a lot of work, uh, editing, a lot of sound recording, a lot of engineering of sound, a lot of drawing of things. But when it came to this piece, I really wanted to put myself, or at least attempt to try to feel, what it might feel like to be in a position that my ancestors were in. And this was the closest I could really come to doing that. And for me, I this undoing of the purchase I'm just is nothing. My making of this is nothing compared to what my ancestors went through. And that's ultimately, what I want people to understand is that the differ, or to at least contemplate, is that this was, my attempt to understand what they're doing. And I would like, or what they went through, what my ancestors went through. And I would like other people to think about what my ancestors went through. And I do think that people can draw the analogy between these very dangerous trucks, cars moving at high speeds, coming right at you. And I believe it's a pretty, I think you can make the analogy between what I'm trying to express here by walking that that trail, or the new trail, or what I could approximate as the trail, and what my ancestors went through. But ultimately, I can never understand what my ancestors went through, and that is probably the most important thing, and the thing that sticks out every time when I deal with my Delaware or my Lenape heritage, is that, or the heritage of any of my American Indian, uh, with my American Indian hair. When I think about dealing with my American Indian heritage and what my ancestors were faced with, it is nothing compared to my life, and I cannot understand what they were going through. So I'm only attempting to try to understand what they went through. I'm just trying to understand what they went through. And I know that I can never understand, but I still am trying. One, I was really grateful that I had somebody to help me do it. I don't know if I could have, uh, if I would have had the will to do that on my own, untrained. Um, uh, but it was I felt a sense of accomplishment in a very complicated way. I felt like that we had, we had accomplished the task of doing the walk, but still kind of left with this feeling that it is nothing compared to um uh what my ancestors might have felt and what they were faced with many times, not just during this purchase. Um, but and I know that that's a little bit of a repeat of the same thing, but I felt a sense of gratitude. I felt a sense of accomplishment. It's unfortunate that the Lenape are not more are not recognized in a more meaningful way in these markings, in these monuments, that kind of these roadside monuments. It's unfortunate that the Lenape are not represented on them, and in some ways maybe this was how we monumentalize these types of things, is through action. Maybe there's been a lot of talk among my community of Native artists about what monuments mean to us. Are monuments the same things as an obelisk or a sculpture of a leader? We're questioning those things. Artists of my generation that are American Indian ancestry, or that indigenous ancestry. We're questioning how to monumentalize things. And if we want to just do, if we want these, what do we want these forms to look like? And I hesitate to use this word, but in some ways it is about sacrifice in some ways. And it is about at least trying, at least thinking about putting yourself in their shoes and thinking about the difficulties they faced. And so in a sense, these are the kind of conversations that I have with my peers, is what will our monuments look like? How do we monumentalize things? And so I it just leads to more questions for me. We're not important. We're not really the focus of these markers, what they call markers, but they are monuments. But how do we make our own monuments in these meaningful ways? And that's what I felt that we had just done, is we had just kind of monumentalized in a way, or that effort, and and really, in a sense, what we're saying by walking it backwards is that, we don't accept it. I mean, we're not delusional. We understand, capitalism and private rights, and all of that, but we don't accept that type of behavior. And we wanted to do to undo it. I'm of European descent as well.
Hmm.
It's clear by looking at me. I'm obviously of mixed descent. And I understand. And there has been a disappearance of us, a disappearing, I think, is really probably more the nomenclature people use today, the disappearing of the Lenape from that space for hundreds of years. And so an oversight by people who are focused on their community of memory, their community and their concerns, I don't fault them for that. I understand. And also we live in a diaspora. It's hard for us, all of the recognized Lenape descendants, the tribes, all the different Lenape diaspora. Who do you go to? I just think that in some ways it's a part of a larger conversation we've been having in the country for almost a decade now, about monuments and about public kind of symbols of public memory, and symbols of public meaning, that we use as for meaning in public space, and what they look like, how they're made, how they're developed. And I think that's changing today. And I don't know that I would even care to rewrite one of those. I do find them fascinating, but one of those placards, I don't think I would have any interest. Maybe in a sculptural sense, in a formal sense, yes, but I mean, it speaks volumes. that we were included. And all it does is to take a little thought about it, that we're not included on it. It's buddy, it doesn't make me angry. I'm more concerned with trying to understand who we are today as Lenape and Dela people. That's my main. A lot of the kind of education around, who were the first people of this continent. I think that it's something that we can learn greatly from. And because I think there's this sense that the world is getting smaller and faster. And I think it's important to understand what happens with these different types of translations, how important which is to us. um what can we learn from our past, and what did we do right and what did we do wrong. But ultimately we've got to move forward. We've got to live together. And that's kind of just my own personal philosophy and approach. I try to be real, empathetic if people don't understand some about Americans. It's a very complex world. It's a very complicated world. Being involved in it, or being from a Native community, from an indigenous community, you're from your birth, you're politicized. You're already in a political situation, and you can choose. My family chose to be very active in that, and I'm grateful for that, for generations. Other people's families took different paths, and that was their choice. And I make no judgments. I'm just trying to impart something, trying to show people that what our kind of concerns are today. I can only speak for myself, and I can only speak about the life that I've lived, my own lived experience. And this is the only way for me to express to people in the land of my ancestors, Lenape some close approximation to what they might have felt when they were exiled from their homeland, when there was a dubious land exchange. Some would say a stealing of the land. They were hoodwinked. They were swindled out of this land. And what's really disturbing about that is that it seemed to become the model for, or it seemed to give permission to speed up and ramp up. And it's in a way that the sons of William Penn kind of, and I say this, and I've said this before, is they kind of showed people how to steal land from Native Americans. And that's very it's complicated, it's unfortunate, it's dark. And that's something that I feel that we are just now getting the chance to do in our art as American Indians. We're still fighting for, we still have to protect our sovereignty. We still have to fight for the right to express ourselves, to assert our own agency. And part of that agency is being able to talk about the dark nature of human existence. And I think that a great disservice has been done to us, and that we are only these kind of spiritual beings that lived in harmony. We're human beings just like anybody else. And this is the beginning of a very dark chapter for us, or a chapter in a very, that has a lot of very dark chapters, a lot of dark parts in that story. And so for me, I oftentimes feel this way, is sometimes I have to physically, I have to kind of physically exhaust myself when it comes to certain types of uh, uh, forms, or stories that I'm telling, or even sometimes music. So um, it's about, it's kind of, it's extreme, it's not extreme, but it's, yeah, that's it was really, I mean, it was a really important piece for me because number one, I get the chance to express and to represent something that is beyond comprehension. I get to, that's my job, is to contemplate that. And I'm so fortunate that I get to contemplate these difficult things that we most of the time just have to live with. But so to me, this was the best way to express something that is really difficult to understand for us as human beings, as the Lenape, and probably difficult for the people who occupy that space today, or who are today, who that is their home, that is their home today, and that was my ancestors' home. Uh, my family was forced to migrate, and so I'm an Oklahoma Indian, you know. But that's so yeah. I'm coming at it from like this art. It's a chance to use art tropes, art techniques, from that are my interests, like video art and sound art, to express very complicated ideas and very complicated situations.
Thank you.
Or
Thank
I
you.
would say, the very long and complicated history of the Lenape and the United States.